The Last of Us is always presented as the hallmark of video game storytelling. But again, nothing is original, and in case of Last of Us it's same too. Last of Us is heavily inspired by the road book or movie if you know it. The post-apocalyptic worlds of The Last of Us and The Road share striking similarities that go beyond surface-level comparisons. Both stories follow a man and child traversing a desolate landscape, fighting for survival in a world ravaged by disaster. In The Road, it's an unnamed father and son navigating the aftermath of an unspecified problem. The Last of Us gives us Joel and Ellie, making their way through a fungal pandemic that's decimated civilization. These works explore themes of survival, morality, and the depths of human connection in dire circumstances. The protagonists in both face constant danger, not just from their harsh environments, but from other desperate survivors. Trust becomes a scarce and precious resource. Every encounter with strangers carries potentially lethal stakes. The bonds between the central pairs form the emotional core of each story. We see how the adults, hardened by the brutality of their new reality, strive to protect the innocence and humanity of the children in their care. This dynamic creates moments of tenderness amidst the bleakness, reminding us of what's at stake in these ruined worlds. Visually, both The Road and The Last of Us paint pictures of a decaying America. Nature reclaims abandoned cities, while the remnants of the old world serve as constant, haunting reminders of what's been lost. Scavenging for supplies becomes a central activity, with mundane objects taking on new significance in a world of scarcity. While The Last of Us introduces the sci-fi element of the cordyceps fungus and its infected hosts, it maintains the gritty realism that makes The Road so impactful. Both works ground their apocalyptic scenarios in believable human reactions and conflicts. The Road's influence on The Last of Us extends to its somber tone and moments of quiet desperation. Yet the game also introduces more action and a broader cast of characters, expanding on the intimate focus of McCarthy's novel. AXO Children of Men is heavily important. The Last of Us and Children of Men might seem worlds apart at first glance, but dig a little deeper and you'll find some interesting parallels. Both stories unfold in dystopian futures, where humanity faces extinction, though the causes differ. In Children of Men, it's widespread infertility. For The Last of Us, it's a fungal pandemic. But it's how these works explore hope in the face of societal collapse that really connects them. Central to both narratives is the protection of a young person who represents humanity's future. In Children of Men, it's Key, the first pregnant woman in 18 years. The Last of Us gives us Ellie, a girl immune to the cordyceps infection. These characters become living symbols of hope, their survival critical to the possibility of a better tomorrow. The protagonists in both stories, Theo in Children of Men and Joel in The Last of Us, are initially reluctant heroes. They're worn down by the harsh realities of their worlds, having lost faith in the possibility of change. But their journeys with Key and Ellie respectively reignite a sense of purpose and connection they thought long lost. Both works excel at world-building, presenting eerily plausible visions of societal breakdown. They show how quickly the veneer of civilization can crumble when faced with existential threats. Government overreach, militant groups, and desperate individuals all play roles in creating treacherous landscapes for our characters to navigate. Another shared element is the moral ambiguity of their worlds. There are no clear-cut heroes or villains, just people trying to survive by whatever means they deem necessary. This creates complex ethical dilemmas for the characters and invites viewers and players to question what they might do in similar circumstances. While Children of Men maintains a more grounded approach, The Last of Us introduces fantastical elements with its infected. However, both works use their speculative elements to explore very human themes of loss, connection, and the struggle to find meaning in a world that seems beyond saving. The Last of Us also draws from Children of Men's approach to action sequences. Both use intense, often chaotic scenes to heighten tension and illustrate the constant danger of their worlds. But these moments never overshadow the character-driven core of the stories. Next inspiration is 28 Days Later. The Last of Us and 28 Days Later might be set in different mediums, but they share a haunting vision of a world torn apart by a devastating outbreak. Both works reimagine the zombie genre, presenting faster, more aggressive infected that up the ante on survival horror. In 28 Days Later, we see a rage virus that turns people into mindless, violent beings. The Last of Us takes this concept and gives it a fungal twist with the cordyceps infection. Both result in humans transformed into something terrifyingly inhuman, yet still recognizable, a trait that adds an extra layer of horror to encounters. The opening of The Last of Us echoes 28 Days Later's iconic scenes of a deserted city. Both start with the protagonist waking up to find the world drastically changed, immediately setting a tone of isolation and disorientation. These empty urban landscapes become characters in their own right, silently telling the story of society's rapid collapse. Both works excel at building tension through sound design. The infected in 28 Days Later and The Last of Us are often heard before they're seen, their inhuman noises serving as a constant reminder of the ever-present danger. This audio-driven fear carries through to gameplay in The Last of Us, where players must listen closely to survive. Another shared element is the focus on small groups of survivors. Rather than grand world-saving quests, both narratives zoom in on personal stories of survival and connection. They explore how crisis can bring out both the best and worst in people, leading to moments of surprising humanity amidst brutality. The Last of Us borrows from 28 Days Later's approach to action sequences, favoring intense, chaotic encounters over prolonged battles. Both emphasize the vulnerability of their human characters, making each confrontation with the infected a genuinely nerve-wracking experience. Both stories also delve into the darker aspects of human nature in crisis. They show how the fall of society can lead to the rise of authoritarian groups and individuals willing to commit atrocities in the name of survival or control. This adds layers of complexity to their worlds, where other humans often pose as much of a threat as the infected. The environmental storytelling in The Last of Us draws inspiration from 28 Days Later's depiction of a world quickly reclaimed by nature. Overgrown cities and abandoned quarantine zones tell silent stories of humanity's retreat in the face of overwhelming disaster. 28 Days Later maintains a more realistic approach. The Last of Us introduces elements of body horror with its clickers and bloaters. However, both use their infected to explore themes of loss of humanity and the thin line between civilization and savagery. Character of Ellie is somewhat taken from True Grit, a classic. At first glance, the worlds of The Last of Us and True Grit couldn't seem more different. One's a post-apocalyptic survival story, the other a Western revenge tale. But look closer at their young female protagonists, Ellie and Maddie Ross, and you'll find some striking similarities that suggest Ellie's character may have been influenced by Maddie's. The moral ambiguity present in No Country for Old Men is mirrored in The Last of Us. Just as Sheriff Bell grapples with a world he no longer understands, Joel must navigate a post-apocalyptic landscape where traditional notions of right and wrong have become blurred. Both stories force their characters, and by extension the audience, to confront difficult ethical questions without offering easy answers. Naughty Dog also seems to have taken inspiration from No Country for Old Men's sparse use of music. Both works often rely on ambient sounds and silence to build atmosphere, using music sparingly for maximum impact. This approach heightens tension and immerses the audience deeper into the world. The Last of Us echoes No Country for Old Men's approach to dialogue as well. Conversations are often terse and loaded with subtext. Characters reveal themselves more through actions than words, leaving the audience to interpret motivations and emotions. Both stories also share a focus on the idea of fate versus free will. In No Country for Old Men, Chigurh's coin toss represents the random nature of fate. The Last of Us explores similar themes through the random nature of who's infected and who survives, and the choices characters make in response to these circumstances. If you think there's another piece of media which you believe might have inspired Last of Us, let me know in the comment section. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Till then, take care and have a nice day. Both Ellie and Maddie are tough, resourceful young girls thrust into harsh, adult worlds. Maddie navigates the dangerous frontier of the Old West, while Ellie faces the equally treacherous landscape of a post-pandemic America. These environments demand a level of grit and determination that both characters possess in spades. One of the most notable shared traits between Ellie and Maddie is their sharp wit and quick tongue. Both girls are unafraid to speak their minds, often using humor and sarcasm as defense mechanisms. This verbal dexterity allows them to hold their own against adults who might otherwise dismiss them. Both characters also display a maturity beyond their years, forced to grow up quickly due to their circumstances. Maddie's drive for justice and Ellie's fight for survival push them to take on responsibilities and make decisions that would challenge most adults. The relationships between these young girls and their older male protectors form the emotional cores of both stories. Maddie's dynamic with Rooster Cogburn in True Grit shares similarities with Ellie's relationship with Joel in The Last of Us. In both cases, we see gruff, world-weary men gradually forming protective bonds with these determined young girls. Another shared trait is their surprising proficiency with firearms. Maddie's skill with a revolver and Ellie's aptitude for various weapons in The Last of Us showcase their adaptability and willingness to do what's necessary to achieve their goals. Both Ellie and Maddie also display a strong sense of morality, even in worlds where such notions often seem outdated. They have clear ideas of right and wrong, though these beliefs are tested and evolve throughout their journeys. The Last of Us and True Grit both explore themes of vengeance and the cost it exacts. While Maddie's quest for revenge drives the plot of True Grit, Ellie's journey in The Last of Us, particularly in Part 2, delves deep into the destructive nature of vengeance. Another parallel is how both girls serve as catalysts for change in the older men they travel with. Maddie's determination forces Rooster to confront his own principles, while Ellie's presence prompts Joel to rediscover his humanity. Now, the storytelling and overall nature seems very alike of No Country for Old Men. Naughty Dog seems to have taken a few pages from the Coen brothers' playbook, crafting a narrative that echoes the gritty, morally ambiguous tone of No Country for Old Men. Let's start with Joel, our weathered protagonist in The Last of Us. In many ways, he feels like he could have stepped right out of No Country for Old Men. Like Llewellyn Moss, Joel is a man out of time, struggling to navigate a world that's become increasingly brutal and unforgiving. Both characters are capable, resourceful, and not afraid to get their hands dirty when the situation calls for it. The Last of Us mirrors No Country for Old Men's approach to violence. It's sudden, brutal, and carries real weight. There's no glorification here. Every violent act has consequences, often unforeseen ones that ripple out to affect others. This creates a constant sense of tension, where danger feels ever-present and no character feels truly safe. Both works excel at creating a sense of inevitability. In No Country for Old Men, we watch as Chigger relentlessly pursues Moss, much like how the infected and hostile humans in The Last of Us constantly threaten Joel and Ellie. This creates a feeling of being hunted, adding to the overall tension of the narratives. The moral ambiguity present in No Country for Old Men is mirrored in The Last of Us. Just as Sheriff Bell grapples with a world he no longer understands, Joel must navigate a post-apocalyptic landscape where traditional notions of right and wrong have become blurred. Both stories force their characters, and by extension the audience, to confront difficult ethical questions without offering easy answers. Naughty Dog also seems to have taken inspiration from No Country for Old Men's sparse use of music. Both works often rely on ambient sounds and silence to build atmosphere, using music sparingly for maximum impact. This approach heightens tension and immerses the audience deeper into the world. The Last of Us echoes No Country for Old Men's approach to dialogue as well. Conversations are often terse and loaded with subtext. Characters reveal themselves more through actions than words, leaving the audience to interpret motivations and emotions. Both stories also share a focus on the idea of fate versus free will. In No Country for Old Men, Chigger's coin toss represents the random nature of fate. The Last of Us explores similar themes through the random nature of who's infected and who survives, and the choices characters make in response to these circumstances. If you think there's another piece of media which you believe might have inspired Last of Us, let me know in the comment section. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Till then, take care and have a nice day.